Hi, my name is Sam Scott. I think I'm somewhere in the middle of your list. All right, everybody ready? In the times of the ancient Greeks, the Olympics were the center of their culture. They would stop anything, from war to political disputes, to have these games. Now, if we fast forward to modern times, we can see that our priorities aren't quite the same. Our modern system is just far more complicated than it was back then. And we have to ask ourselves when we're hosting these games, can we actually afford them? Can the country that's hosting these games really afford to host them, and what are the consequences of that? Now, the question that's been asked of me today is, can Brazil afford the Olympics? And my answer to this would be no. No, Brazil cannot afford the Olympics because they have no money, no provision, and finally, no carnival. So before we go into exactly how they're not going to be able to afford these Olympics, let's just look back at what afford means and what we're really going to be looking at under this question. Now, according to the dictionary, the definition of afford is either to be able to have enough money to pay for, or to be able to provide for. So we're going to be looking at both perspectives of this definition of afford, both of do they have enough money, and can they properly provide for the people attending this, before finally looking at what's going on right now with other similar festivals. So first of all, no money. Do they have enough money to afford these games? Now right now they're in a major recession. According to Al Jazeera America on December 11th of 2015, they're in the middle of a recession with massive job loss. This year they're expected to lay off 208,000 people. Their GDP is expected to shrink by about 2.5%, which is a massive amount. Clearly, Brazil's economy is a mess. According to The Economist on December 30th of 2015, they have a massive debt too. 70% of their GDP is in public debt. So their economy is falling apart, and they owe a very large amount of money back to other countries. They're in a major amount of debt. What all this leads to is a massive inflation rate. According to Reuters on November 6th of 2015, their inflation rate was just under 10%. That's a massive inflation rate. If we compare that with the United States, which according to Business Insider from around the same time, it was just under 2%. So you see, Brazil has a massive inflation rate. What this means is their already little amount of money goes even less. It's worth even less, and they have less money. All this means that they cannot afford the Olympics. They don't have the money to host these massive games, these worldwide celebration. We've seen this reflected in their budget towards the Olympics. They've actually been slashing the budget. According to Business Insider on January 25th of 2016, they've already slashed their budget down from $13 billion originally intended in 2009 to just $500 million. So it's obviously a very major reduction in their budget. They're clearly reducing the amount of funds they have for this because they simply cannot afford these games. Given their economic situation and the impacts that's having on them, they can't afford them financially. But let's look at the other definition of afford, of can they actually provide for the people at these games? We're going to look at three different crises that are going on right now that show that they actually really can't properly provide. The first are of evictions. Now, in order to try to host these games, they're actually evicting people from their homes. According to Time, according to Time magazine on December 27th of 2015, they're actually bulldozing hundreds of small homes, leaving people homeless and jobless in order to make room for the games. Now, this is a tragic situation. It's really illustrating the desperate situation, how desperate they are. They simply don't have enough money to even afford to buy the land for this. They're evicting people from their homes, leading to terrible situations in their country that they really can't deal with. The second crisis they can't deal with is of illness. Now, very recently, there's been a major outbreak of the Zika virus in Brazil. What this is, according to the BBC on January 24th of 2016, it's a mosquito-borne illness that's causing major birth defects in Brazil. Now, one would think that they would have some major response strategy to this, but they really don't. To avoid these international tourists from actually getting the disease, they basically advise to avoid mosquitoes or wear bug spray. Now, they don't have an actually method together to be able to deal with this, as also talked about in the BBC. They can't deal with this, they can't provide for the people in this regard. And the final crisis that they have to deal with, also probably the largest, is that of terrorism. According to Business Insider on November 20th of 2015, terrorism is a massive threat to the Brazil Olympics. After the Paris attacks, it clearly highlights the threat that they're in, and they're ill-prepared to deal with it. They have no police force that can properly deal with a terrorist attack, and they really have no strategy to protect the Olympics from this. All this means that they cannot properly afford to have these Olympics because they can't provide for their people. So what's all this leading to? What are all these issues that they're having right now? What can we see right now? We can tell they're in a terrible situation, both financially and in the provision, and it's really showing in other similar festivals. One of the most popular attractions in Brazil is their Carnaval de Brazil, which is their massive 5-day carnival they hold every year. Major tradition, world famous. But yet recently, according to Business Insider, on January 25th of this year, just a few days ago, they unfortunately were forced to cancel the Carnival this year. The cancellation was due to the economic hardships they're going through, of them simply not having enough money to do this. This clearly shows that Brazil is in an economic state. They cannot afford the Olympic Games because they cannot afford their major festival. We've seen here that they can't afford, their economy is falling apart and they can't afford these games financially. They can't afford to provide for the people from all these threats. And this is playing out by showing that they can't afford for their other festivals. Thank you.